Chapter 404, titled Speculation, begins where the previous one left off, with Kurapika having entered Third Prince Zhanglei's chambers to provide insight into his guardian spirit beast's ability. Kurapika confirms that the coins do indeed change in value every 10 days, further elaborating that while there'd usually be a limit to how many coins could be conjured in total, they're after all not just regular coins but catalysts for supernatural effects, this limit is either entirely done away with or is significantly increased due to the fact that the coins are meant to be distributed to others, potentially implying that they use the aura of their owners to increase in value, thus allowing for mass production. Since the point of currency is to change hands, Pika goes to verify that those coins in the prince's possession are visually different from the ones he's given out to others. While the prince's coins have the image of Zhang's Dharma Chakra-like GSB on their backs, those given to others show the prince's own likeness instead. Kurapika advises Zhanglei to gift one of the coins he owns to a member of his entourage, to see whether there'll be any changes. But, being the sly fox Zhang is, he gifts a 10 value coin to Kurapika instead, thus killing 3 birds with 1 stone. In this way, he can not only determine A, whether the image on the back of the coin will change, B, if the value on the front will change, and C, whether Kurapika will accept the prince's gift. This last, bird serves to determine whether Kurapika will consciously and explicitly recognize his subservient position by accepting any potential risks that may arise from him owning one of the prince's coins. In his mind, Kurapika has no choice but to accept, requiring Zhanglei's trust and cooperation in order to maximize Wobble's safety. Upon accepting the coin, both the value on the front and the symbol on the back change. The number resets from 10 to 1, and the symbol changes from picturing the GSB to showing Zhang himself. This value reset entails a few things, the biggest of which is that Zhang can't hoard the coins, have them reach a high value, and then gift them to someone. This is especially important if Zhang can't use them himself. If that's the case, I'd say he needs to start handing them out to those he deems the most loyal immediately. Otherwise, risk his GSB being entirely useless for the length of the succession war. But it would seem that Zhang has a different idea. He isn't in any kind of real rush, having already accepted that his GSB's ability won't be of much use during the war itself, and having resolved himself to win the whole thing without relying on its power. Kurapika goes on to explain that Zhang's GSB is most likely a cumulative conjurer, with the effect that it'll awaken the holder's Nen after about 6 months, and then gift unto them an ability after what comes to about a year and 9 months, thereby bypassing all the effort and risks one would generally need to go through in order to attain the level of Nen mastery needed in order to produce a Hatsu. Kurapika's guess of how long it'll take for a Hatsu to manifest is based on the concept of the unimaginable number in Buddhism being 10 to the power of 64. I couldn't find a reference to that number online, but nonetheless, that would mean that the holder would awaken their ability after holding the coin for about 21 months, i.e. 1 year and 9 months as stated earlier. By the way, it took me well over half an hour to calculate that. My brain isn't built for what barely amounts to 7th grade math, and I think I lost like 100 calories pushing it into overdrive while trying to figure this stuff out. In any case, Kurapika thinks that attaining Nen in such a cost and risk-free way entails that the GSB will also require compensation, which he speculates to be a semi-enforced loyalty to Zhanglei, meaning that the GSB's ability would also have a pseudo-coercive manipulation aspect to it. As I said, he thinks this and doesn't actually say it. This not only because Zhang very subtly instructs him not to, not wanting Kurapika to reveal any part of Zhang's ability that could pose a direct threat to First Prince Benjamin, lest he sets his sights on the Third Prince. But also because, being the cognitive powerhouse that he is, Kurapika surmises on the spot that 1 coin is missing, and that no one but Koben Toba, one of Benjamin's personal guards, could have taken it, being the only other Nen user not loyal to Zhanglei in the room. If Kurapika's hunch about pseudo-coercive manipulation is right, he wants to see how the coin would influence Koventoba going forward. Kurapika then asks Zhang to wait a while for the other topic or the other matter, depending on the translation, saying that the second round of his Nen classes would be key to it, whatever it may be. We then end Kurapika and Ko's visitation to the third prince, with him contemplating whether it be better to move in with Zhang Lei in room 1003 or stay in room 1014. While the added protection would be significant in general terms, Kurapika is concerned that Benjamin may soon target either 3rd Prince Zhang Lei, 4th Prince Terror Sandwich, or 7th Prince Loserus, since by assassinating a true boss of one of the 3 mafia families and framing it as a mafia hit, Benjamin would create chaos on the lower decks, thereby giving himself more than enough of an excuse to enact martial law, use the powers allotted to him by it to put all the princes under house arrest, and then dispose of them as he saw fit, framing their deaths as additional mafia hits. Should they move in with Zhang, Wobble's death could serve to further bolster the narrative of how the 3rd prince was killed, by emphasizing the cruelty and brutality of the mafia, allowing Benjamin to kill 2 birds, or in this case princes, with 1 stone, or in this case, I don't know, a hug. That took a while to surmise, and we're not even a third way there. Amazing. A few thoughts before we move on to the next segment. First, am I the only one who gets the feeling that the mechanics of Zhang's ability are rather counterintuitive? Kurapika touches on this, but coins are meant to be traded, not simply hoarded. If the only mechanic of the ability is that they awaken Nen in the holder after 6 months, and then manifest an ability after a year and 9 months, then why would they appear as coins and not medals or something else, which isn't defined by the concept of tradable currency? The GSB manifesting coins should imply that they can be traded for either goods or services, so I think there's more to Zhang's ability than was stated in this chapter. And the effect of holding onto a coin for a long time may simply be one of the things it can do. I go into this in detail in my video analyzing Zhang Lei and his GSB, but it would make the most sense to me if the coins could be traded in for a boon of some kind, equivalent to the value of the coin, with the upper threshold being the permanent awakening of a Hatsu. Second, Kurapika advises Zhang to keep either some of the coins or the majority of them, depending on the translation, implying perhaps that the prince should always have a monopoly. Third, Kurapika calls Zhang Lei's GSB a cumulative type conjurer, but it had initially been described as a compound or composite type conjurer in chapter 376. We don't know what exactly that designation entails, since no other ability shares it. Furthermore, it's revealed there that multiple abilities may be awakened when the coin holder satisfies the needed conditions, further implying that Kurapika's analysis doesn't encompass the full scope of the coin's potential. Fourth, in that same brief overview, there's no mention of manipulation, meaning that pseudo-coercive manipulation may or may not actually be a mechanic of the ability. Bear in mind, Kurapika is making hypotheses based on minimal information here, essentially making educated guesses. A long-term ability like Zhang Lei's would be very difficult to pinpoint, since it takes a while to meaningfully manifest. In any case, my suspicion is that Koventoba will get into a situation where he may try to use the coin to gain a boon of some kind, perhaps seeing Temptory use one of his coins to great effect, only to suffer a penalty for theft. Also, it's worth mentioning that we don't know what image Koventoba's stolen coin has. Fifth, Kurapika doesn't touch on how possessing multiple coins may affect their growth. Now that Temptory has 2, perhaps something will come of it. Sixth, this is unrelated to Zhang Lei's GSB, but has to do with Benjamin's potential plan to assassinate Zhang, Terror, and Loserus, by enacting martial law and framing the kills as mafia retaliations. Wouldn't that make him look incompetent? If multiple princes die, be it by his hand or anyone else's, no matter how it's framed, as the deputy military advisor who has invoked martial law, wouldn't he be viewed as responsible for any deaths following the initial apparent mafia hit? It may get him closer to the throne, but his reputation would take quite the serious hit. Impeachment or even criminal liability may not be out of the question. By the way, I'm really starting to loathe Zhang Lei. Every damn time he appears, the script gets bloated like a Left 4 Dead boomer about to pop. Here's hoping he bites it sooner rather than later. And we finally cut away to see Leorio. I guess his request for more panel time finally reached Togashi. We see him, along with Cheadle, rushing Halkenburg, or rather his body, to undergo a battery of tests as his condition has suddenly taken a turn for the worse. Halkenburg's soul, possessing Captain Might's body, has successfully infected Halkenburg's own body, and the symptoms of 17 have begun to manifest. Halk then goes on to explain his ability, which took me another hour and 2 translations to hopefully understand. So, as you know, Halk's ability allows for himself or one of his followers, the selection is random, to possess the body of the target pierced by his arrow. Well, it turns out that it isn't mere possession, but a soul swap. When someone is first shot with an arrow, they briefly lose consciousness, only to awaken with the soul or mind of one of Halkenburg's followers possessing them. Let's use a concrete example of Sumidori possessing Shikaku. The mechanics of the ability stipulate that only one soul can be awake at the same time, meaning that while Sumidori is awake and controlling Shikaku's body, Shikaku's mind will remain dormant in Sumidori's body, and he'll forcibly remain in a sleep-like state. Only when Sumidori's mind relinquishes control, most likely still needing sleep in order to function, can Shikaku's mind awaken, allowing him to freely control Sumidori's body. However, as soon as Sumidori's mind is awakened once again, Shikaku's mind will immediately lose control of Sumidori's body, as it once again enters a forced sleep-like state, since Shikaku's control is suppressed. It's worth mentioning that while Sumidori's mind in Shikaku's body can be awakened, for example while he's asleep, Shikaku's mind in Sumidori's body cannot be forcefully awakened while Sumidori's mind is conscious. In other words, Halk's followers have priority when it comes to taking and maintaining control, i.e. they have dominance. This is a priority earned through their willingness to put their minds or souls on the line with every shot of Halkenburg's arrow. With that established, there were 2 main things that Halk and his men needed to test. First, what happens when the body of the target, i.e. Shikaku, dies while being possessed by one of Halk's followers, i.e. Sumidori? While he doesn't give a clear answer, the strong implication is that the followers, i.e. Sumidori's mind, dies with Shikaku's body, and Shikaku's mind permanently comes to possess Sumidori's body. A complete swap occurs. Alright, the next thing that needed to be checked is what would happen to Shikaku's mind if his now new permanent body is killed, since he no longer has his original body to return to. Again, no clear answer is given, but the relatively strong implication is that he would die in the truest sense of the word, since his mind or soul no longer had a body to return to. The final thing that needed to be tested is what would happen if the body of Halkenburg's follower that's being inhabited by the target's soul dies first. This was tested with Vict, but I'll use Sumidori and Shikaku as examples again, since it wasn't revealed which follower actually took possession of Vict. What would happen if Sumidori's body, that was now inhabited by Shikaku's mind, died? Shikaku's mind would go back to his original body, and the 2 souls would coexist. They wouldn't meld together or something like that. Instead, they would co-pilot the body using the same principle of swapping out control, depending on who's awake and who's asleep. As in, while Shikaku's mind is awake and in control of his own body, Sumidori's mind would be suppressed and vice versa. However, the big difference now is that since it's his own body, Shikaku would have priority in taking control, meaning that he could choose to suppress Sumidori. Similar, but probably not the same, as how Aluka/Nanika works. Now I know what you're thinking. Why did then Vict allow for Halkenburg's follower to take control of his body and distract Captain Might the previous chapter? Well, he didn't. As in, he didn't have any choice in the matter since his body was actually fully controlled by Halk's follower. You see, there's a caveat or a workaround to this priority or dominance mechanic, and one Halkenburg plans to use for his own benefit. See, at some point, Vict, while in control of his own body, was given a sedative to forcefully fall asleep. Since Vict was asleep, this meant Halk's follower had full control of Vict's body until such a time as the sedative wore off. in which case Vic's mind would awaken and he'd once again regain the capacity to suppress the invading consciousness. Since he knows how quickly the virus works, implying that he can peer into Might's memories to some degree, Halk's own plan entails for him to take a sedative at around the same time his original body would die, and Might's consciousness return to his own body to assert dominance. Might would awaken, most likely tied up or locked up and away from any communication equipment, and then almost immediately fall asleep again thanks to the effects of the sedative, allowing Halkenburg to assert control for another 10 hours or so while the sedative works, in which time he plans to put his plan for the succession war into motion. My head hurts. A few observations. 1. We don't know what Might's ability is, but if Halk can indeed read his memories, he'll take precautions to ensure Might can't use it to escape or warn Benjamin. 2. Something Halk couldn't have tested is whether or not he can actually use his arrow while in another's body. If he couldn't, perhaps he'd be able to use Might's ability instead. Ideally, he could use both, but that's not likely. 3. If he could use it again, would his soul even be eligible for transfer? Or would this guarantee that a follower of his would be picked? 4. Would he still need the help of his followers to use the ability, or could he use Might's and Benjamin's own men against them? Though I doubt any of them would actually fall for it, and it doesn't seem in line with Halk's creed. 5. As I said last time, it's questionable whether or not the arrow can even be used on Benjamin, since the interaction between it and Halk's GSB, which bestowed it, is still unclear. And 6. How does Halk plan to take the throne now that his body is dead? Sure, he most likely correctly deduced that death in the context of the succession war entails death of a prince's body and soul, meaning that he will most likely remain in the race despite his body having perished as long as his soul remains tethered to a different one. But how will he take the throne while in someone else's body? Even if he were to win, how would the public accept it, and how would someone outside the family, who isn't even technically eligible for the throne, suddenly become king from a legal standpoint? Furthermore, I don't believe his plan is to simply assassinate Benjamin in some kind of murder-suicide. Instead, I think he aims to pave the way for someone else to take the throne, with the most likely candidate, unfortunately, being 4th Prince Terror Sandwich. Keep in mind that Halk isn't aware of Terror's debauchery, since Melody didn't have the chance to gift him Cacho's letter. Not that he'd believe it in the first place. The only reason I'm having second thoughts about him intending to put Terror on the throne is because after he spoke to his mother, First Queen Unma, she wholeheartedly agreed to support him in his endeavors, with him most likely instructing her to deny an autopsy so as to quicken the whole process. I heavily doubt that his own mother, who went through such lengths to keep him safe, would so enthusiastically agree to a plot that would have her 2 biological sons, namely Halkenburg and Benjamin, killed and eliminated from the succession war. As I said in the previous review, I'm very doubtful of Terror even being Unma's biological son, and even if he was, I'm sure Unma's more than aware of his degenerate antics, and would much rather see either Halk or Benji on the throne instead of him. But I am just hard speculating now, we know next to nothing about her character. Speaking of Terror, we focus on him for a brief moment to further emphasize just how much of a Nen monster he is, having already got his Zetsu time in under 3.5 seconds, with his aim being to get it down to less than a single second. While I really don't want it to be the case, since as I said previously, the dude has way too many things going for him already, I really can't ignore the fact that he looks so much like a younger Netero in this chapter. This, plus his propensity to set almost unrealistic goals for himself and others, much like the late chairman did, means that it's not looking good. For me at least, you may like the idea. We then cut to Kurapika and co, who are discussing the addition of 2nd Prince Camilla's guard to the new round of Nen classes. While Babimaina is vaguely aware that the have-nots utilize curses, Kurapika can only speculate. To his credit, he does correctly deduce that the have-not is obviously being sent to do something, with Bill and him agreeing to keep Camilla's guard as far away from Prince Wobble as possible. We then cut to the body of 9th Prince Halkenburg, who has been declared dead. We then see Might, piloted by the late Halkenburg, informing Benjamin of his own body's demise, telling him that his brother's last wishes were 1. For there to be a public service announcement informing the passengers of his supposed passing, 2. For there to be a send-off by his supporters, and 3. That his personal private guard transport the coffin. Partly out of practicality to appease Halk's supporters, and partly out of what seems to be genuine brotherly affection, Benjamin agrees to all 3 requests. Might then informs him that he'll oversee the whole process, and then return to Benjamin with Halkenburg's body. Now, Halk's body will be transported starting from the 3rd to the 2nd and then the 1st tier, due to his requested send-off, which will occur on the 3rd tier, so that all his supporters, and not just the VIPs and the 2nd tier and above, would have the opportunity to say their goodbyes. While giving his followers peace of mind could partially be his motivation, he most likely plans to do something while on the 3rd tier. As Might said to Benjamin, he will arrive at the same time as Halk's body, meaning that Halkenburg, in control of Might's body, will be surrounded by more of his supporters than ever before. I'm not sure how he would make it happen, since he's no longer in his own body. Perhaps his supporters could rile up the crowd or something, but if there was ever a time to strike at Benjamin, their father, King Nasubi, or anyone, be it through his ability or any other way, it'd be then. Remember that Halk's got about 10 hours before Might's sedative wears off, and that's only if he accounted for Might having the constitution of a Nen user, meaning that either Halk's mind will be suppressed, or he'll attempt to jump bodies in the meantime. We finally cut to Nobunaga, Finks, and Phaeton, who've just heard the announcement that was foreshadowed back in chapter 400, informing the passengers that 9th Prince Halkenburg has died. They don't much care, since he wasn't a benefactor of a mafia family. Instead, Nobunaga says how he needs to straighten some things out with the Shu-U and Sha-A crime families, before they move on to massacring the remnants of the rogue A-E family. Since apparently, depending on what answer the 2 families give, they either have to go all out or call the others, depending on the translation. My brain isn't working anymore, so I can't even guess what Nobu could have in mind, but knowing him, he'll probably strong-arm them into letting Heinrich join the troop or something. A final note on this chapter. An opening between the normally sealed off 3rd and 2nd tiers means that the potential for infiltration is very real. This is a theory most of you are probably familiar with. It's not mine, I'll link to the original Reddit post if I can find it, but it states that the Hisoka we saw pummeling Lynch, scaring Zakuro, and going on a date with Heinrich isn't actually Hisoka, but Chrollo in disguise. If that's the case and Chrollo can shift his appearance to such an extent, he could easily slip into the 2nd tier if he wanted, thinking that Hisoka was perhaps living it up on tier 2 while they were busting their butts trying to find him on the lower tiers. That's just one possibility. As I said, any movement between the tiers being allowed creates a whole hodgepodge of possibilities any of the dozen or so factions could use and abuse in various ways. And that's Error 404 Not Found done. This one was a doozy, not gonna lie. I usually ask your opinions here about a specific thing I'd like to hear your feedback on, but there was so much here that I don't even compute anymore. At least tell me if I made the chapter actually easier to digest. As always, thank you very much for watching. Your feedback is always appreciated. I'd like to thank Amaswamy for going the extra mile in supporting the channel, and I'll see you in the next one.